Thank you very much, Benyam, Your Majesty, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, dear children, assuming that some of them will be watching us online. This morning I was offered to order by telephone online a DNA testing kit, and in a few days I could get an analysis of my origins. I can feel deeply Dutch and still have 30% of Baltic states, 20% of Sicily, 6% Scandinavian, and 5% of Chihuahua in my blood. And look at us here in the room, people from different continents, professional backgrounds, beliefs and religions who pray to different gods, work for different bosses, and speak different languages. And yet we form a community. There's something that we share and that cannot be measured in percentages, something that cannot be given and cannot be taken. It's our human dignity. It's enshrined in the very first article of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, adopted in 1989, was both a reminder and a revolution. It was a reminder because children didn't need to wait for the convention, as their rights were already recognized as befalling every human being. But the convention was also a revolution because it brought states to recognize that children are not a homogeneous group of dependent people, but individual holders of rights. As UN Special Rapporteur on sale and sexual exploitation of children, for me, and I'm sure that my opinion is not only mine, there is no doubt that sale and sexual exploitation of children are amongst the worst affronts to human dignity. Treating children as a commodity is denying them their individuality and their status as a person. And when this happens, chances are that the consequences will last for life. They have a huge human cost, but also, as we heard, a social and economic cost. During my work at the Council of Europe and as UN Special Rapporteur, I've seen the good and the evil. I've seen huge progress in law, practice and awareness, and this very conference is a proof of that. Nevertheless, I have to say that the respect of the child's dignity and children's rights in general continue to come as an afterthought in the best of circumstances, instead of being embedded in all our actions and decisions. And the latest revolution, the information society revolution, has occurred at the expense of millions of children's dignity and integrity. Indeed, one of the major challenges today, and we just heard it, is the globalization of internet and the absence of an ethical code governing its use or a truly global internet governance. I will not dwell on the various manifestations or the forms of online sexual exploitation. We just heard a lot about them. It's about grooming, it's about live streaming. You know, we know, and we've heard a lot about it, but I will focus on what needs to be done. And for me, addressing online sexual exploitation of children requires an approach building upon three pillars. First, always put child dignity first. In all human enterprises, it must be children's dignity must be there by design. Whether you run a sport club or you build a business or you guide a religious community, you must assess in advance the possible impact on children. It's a rights-based approach, and you should lead by example. Just an example, taking a picture of a child. You ask the child, would you agree? Do you agree? And this, by respecting a child's right to decide, you teach the value of respect, consent, and privacy. Children's dignity cannot be traded, taken, or given. And any technological, economic, or social development that sacrifices human dignity cannot be considered progress. Second, we must adopt a holistic approach that's looking at the bigger picture, connecting disciplines, levels of government, and stakeholders. I have 3 P's here: the prosecution, the protection, the prevention, and the protection. Prosecution, essential. Impunity, totally impossible to accept. At the same time, I've seen that accountability in many countries for that particular kind of crime doesn't work. Lack of evidence, loopholes in the law. We need to provide much more expertise here, and I think it's our duty to provide this assistance. At the same time, there is also excessive legislation which, for instance, criminalizes children who share images and do not intend these images to be shared beyond this exchange. And they can be considered as providing child abusive images and can be prosecuted for that. So that's wrong. Children's rights apply here too. Prevention, we have to think about two things: root causes, and also we have to be aware that there's a taboo about issues such as sexuality education. Root causes, very much commonalities with online violence and offline violence, poverty, gender inequality. And I think faith leaders can play an important role here by including these issues in their work to help their communities thrive. These are issues which some people feel very uncomfortable with, and one of the reasons why children do not report abuse is because feelings of shame, guilt, and fear. So education and religious education must avoid the trap of nourishing those feelings and aim at empowering children, not only to recognize and avoid risky situations, but also to feel safe in reporting them. Protection. We need to invest more in protection, support, counseling, remedies, and justice, addressing this victim-specific needs. Children must know their rights. Children must know that they can challenge any person, no matter the authority or power he or she has over them. And faith leaders need to build trust and lead by example. The child's dignity is wherever the child is, online and offline, within the family, within a religious community, in an orphanage, in a sports arena, or in a detention facility. Each and every one of us has responsibilities and should be empowered to act. And in that respect, we need to do much more about training, empowering all those in contact with children, including in the religious communities. Codes of conduct, internal regulations, contracts, they all must contribute to clarify what is expected of each and every individual. We were asking about standards a moment ago. There are standards. There's the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. There's the optional protocol. They're all there. They need to be interpreted, but above all, they need to be implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, we can hardly imagine where the evolution of technology will lead humankind. We have a number of major issues to address. The way we are handling climate change doesn't augur well. And while some big companies invest millions in work to create the so-called enhanced humans, millions of children are at high risk of abuse and exploitation facilitated by technology. The fact is that we are entering the era of artificial intelligence without even realizing its impact in our lives, our rights, and our dignity. I believe that we all have a huge role to play to make sure that algorithms do not replace conscience, and that science and technology serve first and foremost our very essence, our dignity. And this starts by protecting the child's dignity everywhere, at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maud, for those remarks.